Okay, guys, welcome back to episode 20 this time of the BJJ101 Storeroom podcast. We have an awesome guest in Kerrod. How do I pronounce your last name?
Blissner.
Blissner. So Kerrod Blissner's here joining us today. Kerrod's one of the students here. You've only been training Jujutsu for like a short period of time, probably like, what, a couple months, 3, 4, 5 months?
A bit more.
One year. All right.
Just over a year.
Just over a year. So, look, we always start with like the same kind of question. I try and introduce everyone like in the same way. And what, like, I have a history with you as well. Actually, I met Kerrod through like a rugby program at UQ who used to do a lot of strength and conditioning and stuff there and run their program for strength and conditioning. But we always start like the introduction with like, just talk a little bit about yourself, your upbringing, your childhood, what you're doing for work now, because this is something else that we're going to talk about later on, and also like talk about where you were introduced to martial arts. Were you introduced to martial arts earlier on or later in life, or
No worries. All right, so yeah, as you mentioned, my name's Kerrod. I'm 32. Grew up in a smaller country town called Dolby. It's got about 9,000 to 10,000 people when I was growing up there. Then basically went to school there, moved to Brisbane when I was 18 for my first degree, which was in, it used to be called human movements, but now it's sport and exercise science. Graduated that as an exercise physiologist, which is where I first come across yourself, met you there. Then worked in that field for 6 years. It was I found it a little bit challenging. It's very repetitive. I'm a bit of a goldfish in that I get bored quite quickly. So I started looking for something else within health field that could still give me that sort of satisfaction of helping people. So then I come across paramedics. So I studied paramedics for a further 2 years, got my second degree in that, and now I work for Queensland Ambulance as a paramedic, and I have done for the last 2.5 years. Where did I first get started and like introduced to martial arts?
Or even if you just talk about how like you did sports and stuff like that. Most of the people we talk with, particularly guys and girls that end up doing jiu-jitsu, they always have like a really strong history of some type of athletics. You know what I mean?
So personally, I started playing soccer at 4 till I was 12, then rugby league till I was 18, then rugby union from 18 to about 24 at UQ. I never really made any great heights in playing. Definitely wasn't blessed with the physical attributes. I was a pretty heavy set kid. Which probably actually, to be fair, got me into physical exercise and my interest into the human movements. So I did that for a few years, and then turned my attention from playing to, as you mentioned before, the strength and conditioning, coaching, that sort of thing. So I did that for a few years, and met you at the UQ Rugby Academy. That was in 2011, I think.
Maybe 2012, 2013.
Come across you there. You're already bigger and stronger than me at 18 and 19, so I thought it was probably time to give it away. But no, I really do enjoy that. I think you can get a lot of I think you can learn a lot of life lessons from sort of physical pursuits, whether that's gym based, martial arts based, or anywhere in between. But I still trained myself a little bit, not as much as what I used to. It's nice having that sort of background in the theoretical side of things. You can just sort of go away and do your own programming. So I guess from coaching a few years to turn my attention to martial arts. I probably had a few years before I started here where I was probably a little bit lost. I was just doing gym. I was missing a team environment, missing that kind of connection with people. And it just so happens that I have a friend out at Ipswich who started doing jiu-jitsu. And honestly, one day we just having a bit of a wrestle at home, and just like obviously used a few techniques and that sort of thing. I was just,
what is that? How does that work?
How's that? What's going on here? I'm bigger than you. I should be beating you. And then just the way life works, it was not long after that I saw you must have posted a photo. You just competed. I said, I know Anton. And I think I messaged you and asked you a little bit about it. And then a few weeks later, here I am, and the rest is
history. Awesome.
A
year later. Absolutely. So, I think it'd be good to talk a little bit about the strength and conditioning side as well. Like, With the strength and conditioning, were you always just working with like higher level athletes and stuff like that, or were you working with other people and doing like rehabilitation stuff and that type of thing as well?
So I guess with my degree, I wore two different hats. I had the strength and conditioning hat, which was probably state level, academy level and above. And then my other hat was more clinical exercise physiology. So that was rehabbing.
Yeah.
And the place where I was working, we mainly worked with the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Yeah.
So just rehabbing the war vets.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys have got musculoskeletal issues.
Yeah.
And obviously some mental health issues as well, which we all know exercise is great for. So did that for a few years. I suppose the strength conditioning sort of stuff we worked with, UK Rugby Academy. We worked with Minham Manly Seagulls. We did like rowing Queensland, triathlon Queensland. Yeah. So sort of a wide range there.
With the more like elite athletes, did you ever find any like commonalities in injuries and stuff like that? Or is it more specific to the sport and stuff like that?
It can be quite specific to the sport. So your contact sports, so like your rugbies and things like that, all your points of contact, so shoulders, necks, heads, and then your weight-bearing joints, so knees, things ankles, that get pinned, and knees and ankles. Whereas your triathletes, it's a lot more of that wear and tear.
Repetition,
100%. Like they'll do, a multiple hour event on the weekend and then have to back up at training the next couple of days. And different body types too. So that can sometimes change. They're not so concerned with the heavy weights, that sort of thing. It's less combative, less. I don't want to say physically demanding, but it's less probably confrontational.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was it's always interesting to
less explosive.
Exactly. Getting a few different strings to your bow in that sense. So I definitely sort of miss it a little bit.
Yeah.
Definitely miss that competitive environment, and as you know, like there's nothing quite like getting 8 to 10 of your mates in the gym, and everyone's got the jukebox going, and everyone's giving it the best shot. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, it's a cool environment, man. You definitely like push each other and kind of like it really helps for you to just improve yourself, because you're not really competing against each other as much, but it helps to kind of create and facilitate that environment, which is always super fun when you work out in like a like-minded group of people that are all working for the same goal, whether it's rugby or jiu-jitsu or triathlon or whatever. It's pretty fun environment. Just kind of like comparing that to jiu-jitsu, I would say jiu-jitsu is pretty unique, as in like it does have that competitive element, that explosive element like rugby and stuff like that too, but it also has, I would say that probably the injuries are more likely to be the repetitional type injuries for jiu-jitsu. That's my opinion. Now, again, because it has that interesting fusion, you can have those more explosive catastrophic injuries as well. Even with your like short time in jiu-jitsu, have you noticed like any of the people around you or whatever, is there like a commonality of injuries that you can notice in jiu-jitsu that are occurring?
In jiu-jitsu, definitely, as you were mentioning before, it's those repetitions, those long-term, whether you're constantly getting stacked. So, your upper back and your neck start to, over time, give out. And like you said, like the balance of probability would suggest that, it's probably those sort of longer, more sustained injuries. But you're definitely right. You can, if someone falls the wrong way or something like that, you can easily do a knee, elbow,
I've definitely
like
had that situation occur. So like, you can definitely have large catastrophic injuries, and they're a lot less common. But like anything that's competitive, there's a risk of injury, and you can hurt yourself. And I would probably say like the most common injury that's catastrophic is submissions. What do you think, Lucas? Like I would say that in terms of like more catastrophic or like more like intense injuries generally come from just like poor decision making, people not wanting to concede or something like that, as opposed to like 100%. Running into each other. So
2 weeks ago I almost broke my arm because and most of the times for me, for example, it happens when I go to a scramble, when we're trying to pass a guard and we scramble. I posted my hand on the floor, and my hand got stuck on the mat. He tried to sweep me, my hand and went like this. And I felt the pop. I was like, stop. And Luckily, I
Yeah.
didn't break my arm.
That's good.
But I think sometimes it's more in those situations people are scrambling. That time you were wrestling with Moonsuk,
Yeah.
he jumped for like a
Crazy takedown or
crazy
something. Falls
takedown,
on your leg or
and
ankle.
yeah, it's.
Yeah.
I think this is the most catastrophic ones that can happen. You know.
Yeah,
And-
any jumping or flying type movement is super dangerous. That's why, like, in IFBJ, like, IBJJF Jiu-Jitsu, they outlaw jumping guard, jumping onto your partner to achieve some type of guard position. Like, you know, getting control of their body by jumping onto them is illegal, because if you haven't rehearsed the movement, you're not sure how it works. And that's the same thing that happened to me training with one of the students here. Is they don't understand fully like what's going to happen, and all of the time they're not entering the position correctly. They're not even going to land in the correct control, but they're throwing their body weight. You know, it could be up to 100 kilos at somebody else's body. That's a problem. That's the same with rugby. That's the same with whatever. You're adding velocity to your body weight, and you're throwing that at another human being, and that there's a high risk of injury for that, because all it takes is, all right, it falls on your knee, your ankle, you know,
Doesn't take
compromised portion of your body that's in a bad position, like your hand on the floor, and man, there's a lot of bad things can happen. But the thing that I kind of wanted to like transition into is like, is there any like type of exercises or routines that people can adopt that will help with those more long-term injuries? Because even like Lucas is saying, he had more of like one of those, you know, extreme injuries that are less common. What would you recommend for people, like, you know, after then knowing of like your strength and conditioning background and stuff like that? Is there anything that people need to add? Because this is just like, you know, anecdotal kind of stuff, but I would say the majority of individuals that train here, they use jiu-jitsu as their exercise.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As their conditioning, that's what they do, as opposed to doing their own exercise and conditioning stuff and then adding jiu-jitsu. Is there something that you could recommend for some of the individuals that are having more chronic injuries and stuff like that? Or?
Yeah, I think any sort of generalized strength and conditioning program is going to help. So say if you have two individuals, one has no major injuries, him just sticking to your compound, just your standard like your deadlift, squat, bench, and like some sort of rowing or chin-up activity is going to help sort of, I guess, bulletproof his body to it's going to withstand the rigors of you know, these contact sports better. But some people, you know, may have a knee injury they have to work around. I think some key components that I probably had to think about since starting is like probably like your grip is good. So exercises that challenge your grip are definitely going to translate into better results. Some things like even like having a good and using a few variations of deadlift, you know, you get a good solid base and you get bang for your buck with your deadlift. Like it basically does the most of your body. Probably another one would be like some neck exercises too. It's probably an overlooked area of the body. We're all happy to train from here down.
But looks good on the beach.
Looks good on the beach, absolutely. Absolutely. Aesthetics is where it's
nobody's looking at their neck all the time.
No one wants to look at that bloke with a thick neck. Well, someone might, but
it's not as common.
But it's definitely worth worth thinking about, particularly if you're wanting to stay in the sport for a little while or perhaps compete. Just for injury prevention. It's probably
just more like a longevity type thing. Like I'd say, there's so many students here. Some of them that have been, you know, up to 10 year students that are always in and out of the gym and they have 4 months off and then they come and train for 2 months. And I think the problem is, and we talked on the first podcast with Michael Pegg, who has he has like a degree in exercise physiology and stuff as well. And the biggest thing is like people just don't get on top of their injuries. So they'll get an injury, they'll take the 3 months off or the 6 weeks off or whatever. They'll, you know, do a couple exercises that the physio gave them or someone gave them for about 5 weeks or 4 weeks or 3 weeks, sometimes only 1 week. Rest, all right, I feel good, come back. And then 2 months later or 6 weeks later or 4 weeks later, they have the same injury or some other injury. And then the process starts again. And it's just this like perpetual cycle of being outside of the gym for 4 weeks and then coming back for 4 weeks and being outside of the gym for 6 weeks and coming back for 6 weeks. And I just think like people massively overlook like the thing you're talking about here is just having a generic strength and conditioning regime, which isn't necessary for athletes, it's necessary for anybody. Anybody that does anything that's physically demanding, even if it's like, man, even at your job, if your job is physically demanding, if it's a manual labor job, you need to do some type of strength and conditioning, weights, exercise, whatever, to, allow your body, right, to deal with all the stress of that job, the physical stress of that job, or the physical stress of that activity. And I think that's something that most people completely overlook. And you shouldn't be using jiu-jitsu, rugby, whatever, which is a skill-based sport, to focus on like improving your physicality. Now it's gonna happen by default. You're gonna lose weight and all these things as well. But to keep your body safe and to keep your body healthy physically, and keep your joints uninjured, keep your body uninjured, you have to have some type of like conditioning regime. Absolutely. And I think that's necessary for every human being, as opposed to like...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You'll just feel better. Yeah. Like, if your daily kind of load requires you to be at this level, but you're training at this level, and this is going to feel so much easier on a day-to-day level. And whether that's conditioning, going for a run, might help you, might translate to lasting. You mightn't be gassed after 2 rolls here.
Yeah.
You can do the 5. Or if it's strength training, that's sort of your thing, then you'll find that all of a sudden I can manipulate my opponents a little bit easier into positions that I want them in, rather than fighting off your back or whatever you have to do the whole time.
Yeah, I kind of see it more as in like they would be able to hold like safer postures for longer. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like as opposed to like standing up and curling at their lower back, they'll be able to stay there and be safe with their body. And I think that's going to mitigate a lot of injuries for people just by being able to hold postures. You know what I mean? Like.
So I think a good example of that, it would be like if you were trying to break a closed guard.
Yeah, exactly.
And you need to have a good upper back posture.
Absolutely.
Squat, deadlift. They both require a very similar looking
100% posture and physique.
And if you can load that posture safely in a gym, all things being equal, it should translate onto the... Yeah,
it will directly translate. And I just think, so that's like an interesting for me. And I know everyone's busy with their lives and all this stuff, but like I always, like I talk with a heap of people about just like getting like a baseline of things. And I always think like if you're not exercising regularly, if you're not sleeping, the 7 to 9 hours a night, and if you're not eating generally healthily, you're not eating, 3 balanced meals a day or whatever, like outside of that, like if you can't get these 3 things sorted, you're not going to be comfortable in any aspect of your life. Like these are the 3 basic things that are needed, not extras. They're necessary for you to be somewhat happy and comfortable with your body and the way you feel. And I think that, like, of course, people have got responsibilities, they've got families, they've got all these things, but like these are the 3 basic things that you need to incorporate into your life. If you can't incorporate these 3 basic things, how are you going to have comfort or physical comfort with your body? Just the way it feels. You're going to have pains, you're going to have aches, you're going to feel horrible and all these things. And along with the physical exercise stuff, that includes stretching and all the, the more like the yin and yang style stuff, like the yang stuff being aggressive and powerful, they talk about in yoga, and activation, lifting weights, doing jiu-jitsu, running, blah, blah, blah. You got to have the rebound stuff, which is relaxing and stretching, whatever. And I've talked about it on heaps of podcasts. Like that's something that I've always struggled with. I always go, like most dudes, smash everything, do weights, and then you get injured, and then you come back. And the same thing that we're talking about with the 6 week on, 6 week off. And I've definitely gotten better as I've gotten older and stuff like that, and realised that it's not about just redlining all the time and getting as big as possible and powerful, because it leads to injury. It leads to injury, and it's not the best methodology to kind of like increase your strength and everything like that. Now I'm just focusing on maintaining and maintenance and, staying healthy like I'm talking about now. But I think that's particularly just like people that do jiu-jitsu for like just like a lifestyle activity. It's you would be surprised at how little people I would think actually do any type of strength and conditioning or stretching or eat well or sleep properly, and then that massively affects the way they feel and the way they perform and stuff like that. But a lot of people don't even consider that portion of training. So it's just an interesting thing to kind of mention. It
is it's a fairly simple formula, but it's hard to implement.
100%, yeah. In theory, and it's a lot like jiu-jitsu. In theory, it's the concepts, the principles, everything makes sense, but actually doing it and performing is another story. And that's not that simple, because you got so many other things going on. There's so much stuff to understand. There's stress. You know, if you're talking about jiu-jitsu, when you're rolling, there's stress. There's a guy trying to kill you. You're trying to kill them. Oh, what are we doing? What are we doing? And it becomes this, like, you know, chaotic mess. And I think, you know, life, and I've said this probably on every single episode, but jiu-jitsu is a controlled representation of exactly what life is. You're exposed to that chaotic up and down. You're exposed to the ups and downs and the craziness and the chaos of life, and it helps you deal with life. It teaches you how to deal with it. You're learning on a micro level how to do it on a macro level over your whole life, and it's just I think it's super important that.
No, definitely. I'm definitely, like, I suppose, living that at the moment, like being relatively new to the sport. You come in and everything's just fog. You don't take anything in.
The fog of war, for
you
sure.
just, someone's on top of you trying to, like, either fold you in ways you're not meant to be folded, choke you, all these kind of things. Then over time, as you stop and learn to breathe, think just for a second, again, metaphor to life, it's like things aren't always going to be easy.
No.
But if we stop and just think for 2 seconds, there's a way around it, there's a way out, there's an easier way to do things.
Yeah.
I'm definitely living that and learning that at the moment. That, like, it probably took, so I've been training just over a year, and can rugby background, everything's 1v1, confrontational, tense up, flex up, try to muscle out everything. It's probably taken me like 9 months of the year and it's finally definitely not perfect at it by any means, but it's definitely getting, there's moments there where you just stop and there's clarity, and you can just think, if I just do these couple of small things, I'm not in the mountain anymore, or I'm out of side control, or he has to change now.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's just a constantly changing environment, and then you can definitely take away some of those lessons and apply that to whether it's work, life, whatever's happening.
I remember when I first started Jiu-Jitsu, I think in the beginning it's very hard I think the first thing you understand the broad picture of Jiu-Jitsu, how the thing works, you know? Because in the beginning you don't know if you're doing
you don't
the
know
right
what
thing.
you don't know.
I'm on the top right now. Am I good or bad right now? You know? So in the beginning for me it was just trying to realize to understand the broad picture, and then I started developing my bottom game, and after a while I was like, I'm good on the bottom, but I'm not good on the top, so I need to work on the top right now. You know? And with that I have a question. You guys have a rugby background.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any aspect that helped with the rugby, or something that was bad, the part that's aggressive of rugby that really didn't help with jiu-jitsu?
What do you think rugby helped with, and what do you think rugby kind of made it difficult with?
It's probably one of those double-edged swords. Like, you're very comfortable, like, physically. Physically grappling, being in close contact with people, but the way out in rugby is through strength and power.
Yeah.
I will throw you to the ground, tackle, done. Or I'll, palm you off.
Yeah, I just exert more force and I achieve my goal.
Yeah. Generally speaking, if I'm bigger than you, I'll win the confrontation. Jiu-jitsu, that, I guess, comfort in people being on top of you and grappling with you is fine, but the way out's generally never to generally to just throw someone or use
exert
power
more force,
exert more force in them. Generally, I remember Eduardo saying early on once that if you're having if two bulls are butting their heads, there's an easier way. You don't have to just go head to head with someone and try and outmuscle them. There's generally a way around it,
and it's not a very effective system.
Can also vouch for that. First few months, you would just leave absolutely gassed, and you look around and some people just get up and walk away, they're fine. And here I was, like, buckled over, breathing hard, can't, like, my hands were sore from gripping, just white knuckle gripping, just the whole 20 minutes. But then again, that's getting better. Definitely not great at it yet, but it's getting better as the more and more you come.
So I would say, like, for me, I actually started jiu-jitsu quite early on. I started when I was about 14. So I had already been exposed to jiu-jitsu before I even learned how to be, like, really powerful and aggressive and stuff. I was still a kid. So I think I have a slightly different entry into jiu-jitsu because of the age in which I started. But definitely in general, I would say what most particularly contact athletes, like physical contact athletes, where you're running into each other, have over general people is decision making under pressure. Whether it's catching a ball, running into somebody, or whatever, you have milliseconds of time to make certain decisions. And generally speaking, people that have been put under those stressful environments have a better ability to make decisions under pressure. I'm not saying that they make good decisions. Some of them are still going to react and use power or whatever, because like you're saying, that's what you've been taught for so long. But you generally have a better ability to kind of like navigate through the chaos of stuff and just make decisions and not like go, oh, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people that have never been exposed to anything stressful, that's kind of that fight or flight response. Somebody that's done something confrontational and physical and run into other people before, they will react to fight and explode and whatever, right? Somebody that doesn't have that is just going to react and go, oh shit, what do I do? What do I do? And they kind of freeze a little bit and they don't really do anything at all. So I would say that's one major difference. And then, so for me, the thing that I was good at was definitely the decision-making process stuff. Now, I was exposed to Jiu-Jitsu a little earlier. So the explosive stuff I definitely was doing, but it wasn't as extreme because I was a lot younger and I didn't have the ability to explode at the same rate as a fully grown man yet. So I had to rely on being more tactical. And it's the same thing that you find with individuals that are generally smaller. They don't have the ability to rely on their strength and power, so they have to find some other avenue to have some success. But I would say, generally speaking, most guys or girls that do a power-based sport, whether it's powerlifting, whether it's CrossFit, whether it's rugby, whether it's whatever, something that's, again, the basis of the sport is speed, strength, and power generation of power. They're always going to lean towards that, and because they're going to excel in that attribute compared to the general public. So the problem with that is you start to rely on a physical attribute, all right, to make up for your lack of technical understanding and knowledge. And going back to like kind of Lucas's point, I would say that most gyms in general don't actually teach what jiu-jitsu is. They teach techniques, they teach how to do this, they teach how to do this movement, but they don't actually teach how jiu-jitsu works as a system, as an overall art, how to make an efficient posture and movement system, and how to understand that and how to apply that to other people. And I think that's where the coaching is super important. Like whoever, it's your responsibility as a coach to actually transfer this information to somebody else. And it's not easy because, again, if you are a skilled coach, right, and the same thing if you're a skilled coach as a strength conditioner, you're on page 1070 and they're on page 1 and they're trying to understand what you know about weightlifting and blah. And the same thing with jiu-jitsu. I need to somehow bridge the gap from page 1070 to page 10, and there's all that information in between that you have to try to get them up to speed on as quickly as possible. Definitely. And it's not an easy skill to do that. It's actually very difficult to coach. It's very easy to transfer information onto other people. It's very difficult to transfer information to other people. And I think like most gyms don't actually focus on that much at all. And I'm not saying it has to be the only focus. Of course, people need to get good at the rehearsing and the physical postures and how to do it all and step-by-step techniques and stuff. But like Lucas was saying before, like when you first start jiu-jitsu, and even for me, I didn't understand anything. You're just like, oh, someone showed you this technique, so you go, all right, grab here, do this, and you do the technique. And if you're strong enough, fast enough, athletic enough, whatever, or you're tactical enough, you'll be able to do it. But it's just like, all right, you're just thrown into the deep end of the pool, and you just start throwing movements together, and you're like, oh shit, I'm floating. All right, great. Oh, now I'm not. I'm so shit. And you start trying again. And it's like you're just in like this perpetual state of drowning and trying not to drown, and drowning and trying not to drown, and it's very stressful and it's very uncomfortable and it's very weird. But like if you can kind of like just focus in when that haze is in front of you and the chaos is around you, go, holy shit, what am I supposed to do? Where is my training? Where is my training? Oh shit, Kimura. Boom, boom, boom. And then you do the thing. And like, the more you can kind of do that, the more you can kind of focus in or zone in on just like, holy shit, where am I? What do I do? Like, eventually it starts to become like, all right, where am I? oh man, I'm in the closed guard, and it just gets better and better. Like first, it's like the perpetual drowning state of going, oh shit, gargling water, whatever. All right, then you move into like, okay, where am I? Oh, where am I? Where am I? Oh, closed guard. Okay, I'm in the closed guard, and then as you get more autonomous with stuff, you're like, oh, closed guard, got the grip, bang, kick the guy here, boom, oh, he defended back, oh, whatever, and it becomes just more fluid and interchangeable because there's some autonomy. You don't have to think anymore. You're starting to perform everything. But yeah, the initial stage of jiu-jitsu is complete chaos, and it's kind of like you could probably compare it to like becoming an adult as a human being. Like the first transition to being independent and like understanding that you're an adult now and you're responsible for yourself and your parents are no longer looking after you in the same way. That like, holy shit, what do I do? You're just like this retarded fumbling of like through life and figuring things out and getting a job and renting a place and blah blah blah. Like it's the same kind of situation, but you're just doing it with like a combative martial art with somebody else. So
absolutely,
yeah.
Yeah, so like moving out on your own for the first time.
Yeah,
you
moving out. Yeah.
Grocery shop, cook, clean, pay bills, get a job,
wash your clothes,
wash your clothes, that sort of thing, all within a very short space of time.
Space of time, exactly. And I would say like with jiu-jitsu, that's definitely the same kind of parallel that you're gonna find. Like it's just so overwhelming for everybody because like it's just so new, so different, so completely unintuitive. And like there's some areas that are intuitive, but most of it's not. It's not intuitive at all. Like a lot of other sport activities are a little more intuitive, like playing with balls and like standing on your feet and keeping your balance. But it's, particularly the ground stuff in jiu-jitsu is so unintuitive and so completely left field of people's understanding that it's just like, what is this contorting mess that's going on here? And you have to really be present. And like Tim was talking yesterday, we did a podcast with Tim yesterday about the way he compared practicing music to learning jiu-jitsu. And if you come with the approach that he was talking about, you really will get good. And it's not an enjoyable way to learn though. It's a very repetitive, boring way, but that's the only way to get good.
Yeah,
it's the only way to get good. And he said he's holding his bass and he's like, that was wrong. No, that was wrong. All right, fix my finger a little bit. There we go. All right, that was good. My finger was off. And the same thing you have to do with techniques of jiu-jitsu. The more you go, all right, close guard, foot on the hip, twist my body, hold the shoulders, leg over the head, armbar. My hips are twisted. That's wrong. And you start again and you do the technique and you really focus on what you're doing. Eventually, after 1,000 repetitions, 10,000 repetitions, it's going to be not perfect, but almost perfect. Yeah. It's going to get to a point where you can really rely on those movements. You can really rely on the performance of those contractions. And that's the same thing with the fell off. And again, it's not flattering. The realities of everything you do are not really flattering. Again, there's the ups, which are amazing and they are flattering, and that's what people make highlight videos of. They're highlights. It's not everything. That's the thing. We live so much on YouTube and YouTube, Instagram, everything. All you see is the highlights. And the highlights of life are a small fraction. They're 5% of what's happening. Then you got the lowlights, all the horrible stuff. There's another 5%. The other 90%, it's in the middle ground. And it's just the boring hard work that can tend like, just do the same position over and over and over and over. All right, to get to that point where you can reach, the highs. Yeah. I think that's like an interesting way that he described it, which was really cool to kind of listen to, because it's the same in judo, it's the same in wrestling, it's the same in jiu-jitsu. You just over and over and over perform the technique. With like starting jiu-jitsu, what was your experience starting here, and like how did you feel and how did you kind of navigate through that?
Definitely a fish out of water to start with. Again, you turn up and you're shown a technique, and as soon as you move outside of those very small parameters and anything more than half speed, just here comes the fog and you're just like, I don't know what to do now. I'm either on top, on bottom. Now what? But again, slowly you do piece it together. I think again, coming from the rugby contact background, I was able to probably incorrectly muscle your way out of situations. I think it's just a fairly natural kind of kind of response.
I don't think it's a wrong response either. Like, I think a lot of people are always like, hey, never use strength, never use strength. All right, no, wait a second. All right. There's times you use your strength. There's times, there's particular portions of time and timing that you should exert force. You just can't use it for everything. You can't use it as a blanket thing that's just going to, you're going to overcome technicality, speed, and everything with strength, which is how people use it. And the secondary thing I like to say, the people that don't use force are the people that don't have the ability to.
Yeah.
Anybody that has the ability to exert strength will do it.
Force, use it.
Yeah, correct. The people, correct. The people that are very flexible, whatever, that's what they use. The people that are very quick and fast and agile, that's what they use. All right. Your attributes are a complement to your jiu-jitsu, but they're not what you should rely on. And this is where this misconception, because the most common backhanded compliment for jiu-jitsu is, man, you're a strong guy, dude. Oh, man, you're so strong. Man, you know how many times I've been told that at competitions after submitting somebody else or beating them? Man, you're so strong, bro. Oh, my God. Oh, really? Oh, that's why you lost, because I'm super strong. All right, dude. You know what I mean? Yeah, but like...
So that's, I'll take that then.
No. The thing is like when you're starting off jiu-jitsu, you don't know when you should exert, and you just do it at all times.
That's true. Yeah, that's actually probably more correct thing to say is that you use it at inappropriate times.
Absolutely,
you're wasting so much of your energy
100%
on fruitless endeavor.
Within 2 minutes of the roll starting, you know what I mean, and then 2 minutes to 3 minutes in, you're just like, I can't keep up anymore. And the problem is generally speaking, if you're both beginners, you're both doing that. And then, like, I've watched this before, and it's not got anything to do with you, but just like, I've watched two, like, beginner white belt athletes or practitioners of jiu-jitsu that, you know, they're rolling for, 6 minutes or something like that, and 3 minutes in, and from the beginning, it's already to the death, right? It's to the death. There's a craziness going on. This guy's doing this, and they're pulling each other, and then someone does a sweep, and then they pass, and then they get to the mount, and they get an armbar. And now the guy kind of gets on top in the armbar and he's defending, but now the guy on the bottom is so tired, he can't even exert the force when he needs to in the correct time. He doesn't have the ability anymore. He's right there. He's about to finish, but he has no power left, and then the guy pulls his arm out. And then he goes onto the mount, and then he gets an armbar. And now that this guy on the top is so tired, he's trying to do the armbar as well. He doesn't have any power left over. And now you just got this crazy roll of like people trying to finish each other, but they just don't physically have the strength anymore to do it. And it's so interesting. And so, like, again, it is comical because for me, watching that at a completely different understanding, it's funny. It's interesting.
It's ugly to see.
Yeah, of course, it is a little bit ugly because there's craziness going on, but it's comical. It's funny because they're even in the situation that they wanted to do, but they worked so hard to get there. They wasted all their bullets on the way there. They've got no bullets left in the chamber. They can't even pull the trigger to achieve their goal. And it's just a funny paradoxical scenario, and so many paradoxical scenarios in jiu-jitsu where, again, about the learning stuff and winning and all this stuff. Like, there's a paradox in jiu-jitsu where if your total focus is to win rolls, you end up losing. Yeah. But if your focus is to learn, improve, and get better at jiu-jitsu, you end up winning. And the goal and the way you approach changes the outcomes of everything. And it's not only jiu-jitsu, you know what I mean? But it's just an interesting thing to kind of like point out and note all the time. And yeah, it's just funny. But yeah, continue.
Absolutely. I would say my I guess starting of jiu-jitsu probably paralleled that pretty well, and it's taken the 9 months to a year for it to finally kind of sink in that you often will learn more at a slower pace roll where you just kind of everyone's defending at 60-70%, attacking at 60-70%. You're going to get much more out of that. You don't necessarily walk out totally redlined and gassed, but you walk out, it's not what we're here for. You're here to get better at jiu-jitsu, not for your fitness class. That can be your 5K run
or at least don't do it every session. You know what I mean? You want to do a fitness class, do it once a week rather than 4 times a week or 3 times a week. You know what I mean? So,
absolutely right. There is times for that heated, heavy roll, but otherwise, generally speaking, most of the time it'll just be, going through at a firm pace.
100%. Like probably 70-80% you want to do 90% of your training at that kind of intensity. Something else that I would like to note about that kind of situation is like, as you get more experience, you can train at a higher intensity and still be aware of stuff. But again, the initial stage of starting stuff, same as riding a bike, whatever, it's confusing. It's you're emotionally responding to things or whatever. Like, you don't have the ability, to compose yourself under stress, particularly stress that you're unfamiliar with. Someone gripping you here, lying on their back, wrapping their legs around your neck, all this stuff that's completely unusual to you, and you start freaking out and panicking. Like, training at a high intensity initially, again, it's a normal progression. You do need, like you said, it took you about 9 months to find some consciousness in jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? And it is a normal stage of jiu-jitsu, but anybody that can do that earlier is going to get to that second stage of consciousness earlier. And it gives you the ability to learn earlier. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you're not giving yourself the opportunity to analyze, to recognize, to take in information, to take in stimuli, and like Tim was saying, adjusting the that didn't work with his bass guitar, with his fingers, putting his fingers on the strings, the guitar strings. You're not giving yourself enough cognition to actually recognize where your finger is, why it was there. All right, well, it didn't sound correct. Where should I move my finger? Here, whatever. Like, when you train at that really, really high intensity, but you don't have the ability yet to be composed in those scenarios, you're kind of wasting your time, because all of that effort you're putting into training, you're not actually taking in.
Yeah.
So again, all you're getting really is just an intense workout, but you're not getting much information. You're not getting any feedback. You're not getting any improvement. So, like you're saying, and like you've figured out now at this point, is it's much better to train at 60 to 80% of your overall intensity and exchange techniques with somebody
100%.
else. Attempt, fail, adjust. And I don't mean fail as in you have to get submitted every time, but you attempt to sweep them. They block the sweep. You go, all right, what did I make a mistake on? Oh, I need to make sure that doesn't happen. All right, grip the wrist this time. And now I sweep, it worked, whatever, right?
And I think too, just getting rid of a bit of the, I guess when you're a newcomer, like the ego around losing, quote unquote. Like, no one cares.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, oh, cool, you tapped me in a roll.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
See you next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of individuals that will compete in basic roles as if they're, fighting for medals or money or whatever. But, they're fighting to the death. Their pride's on the line. But no one cares, man. It's just a random gym on a Tuesday night. Yep. No one's interested in winning.
No one cares.
No one cares. No one's going to remember this in 5 years' time. No one's going to remember this tomorrow. No one gives a shit. So that's definitely a much better attitude and approach to the training. Just kind of moving into a completely different area. Like you mentioned before that you're also a paramedic, and we also want to kind of understand how jiu-jitsu connects in other areas of life and stuff like that. And paramedics are a very, very stressful job, and there's a lot of stuff happening. And I just have a question to do with two main things. It's one, with the stress of being a paramedic and stuff like that, do you find jiu-jitsu, I'll do a two-part question. I'll ask this one first, I'll ask another one second, but do you find that jiu-jitsu helps with managing stress, or kind of like a form of meditative activity that really helps with your level of stress and how you feel overall? Is that something that
definitely definitely it's something that's I've noticed in the last definitely probably more so these last probably 3 to 6 months, as I've kind of clicked a bit more here. Decision making under pressure, which we've talked about before. So probably and so that, I guess that's in a clinical sense. So when you're going to what could potentially be a stressful job, you're going there and you're doing all your calculations in your head for whether it's drug calculations, person's weight, that kind of thing, what drugs I might need to give this person, et cetera, et cetera. You can do that, and then when you get there and the person's a completely different size, or it's completely different to what's been put on our little screen. So that there's two options there. You can freak, or you can say that's okay. We'll manage. We'll deal with it. We'll manage whatever comes our way. We'll manage it, which I think is you can get parallels here. Not everything's going to go to plan. You just have to manage, find a way out, think through it. So that one, and then I guess that's in a clinical sort of sense. In a physical sense, we also go to patients who are quite unwell, can be quite agitated. So it does give you a confidence, I suppose, to approach those patients sometimes too. And and in no way does that mean that we're going to like be physical with them or use physical restraint, but you just think it just
it just gives you a different level of confidence
yeah, exactly,
as an individual.
Yeah, if this person was to grab me, I know how to break a grip.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. I can manage distance. Where do I feel how close do I want to get to this patient before? Like we've been to patients' houses where like there's lots of knives around, and like we can't always wait for QPS to come, that kind of thing as well. So sometimes there's those situations. Sometimes patients, a very common one, Valley on the weekend, there's been a fight, someone always loses, they don't like losing, they're agitated, but we need to assess them. And sometimes that frustration can be borne out onto us or you know, all that sort of thing. So it definitely gives you a confidence to, both clinically in decision making, and then physically in terms of if this person was to either A, grab me, or B, you know, become agitated towards me, I can manage my distance, that sort of thing.
Yeah, protect yourself.
Yeah, exactly right.
What about just like with the general stress of life? Does it help with like having you like a less just like a less stressed outlook from all the stress you're taking on from work and stuff like that? So a lot of people would use Jujutsu or a lot of other physical training as, you know, a stress release type activity. Is that something that it kind of helps as well?
Yeah, you can come here and done it many times. You've had a, you know, less than ideal day at work. Yeah. You come here and I don't know what it is, but you step inside and you forget about it all. Yeah. And you can compartmentalize it, process it. But here's it's a good circuit breaker almost. Yeah. You come here, you forget about it, and you can just move on.
Even if it's only for the time of the class, you know, 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever.
Yeah. I think that's incredibly valuable. Yeah. To be able to have that in your back pocket, to know that I can just go to a class, switch off to a class, come here to a group of people who, you know, for the most part, aren't going to talk about work or anything like that. They're just going to come here and they're just going to chat about other things or.
So I tried this, didn't work out. I did. Oh man, you almost got me with this.
Yeah, exactly right. And you can just forget about whatever's going on in the background there for an hour or two a day, which is it's really nice to have that to be able to draw on. Yeah. So that's something I've definitely taken out of it.
Yeah. So the second part of the question already kind of like you kind of mentioned a little bit, but from my understanding, and I don't know the statistics or anything behind this, but from what I understand and what I've listened and heard before is like paramedics have like one of the highest rates of being exposed to violence or having violence like acted out on them of any of the like public health servants and stuff like that in the government system. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like, is that an accurate statement? And like, is there particular violence and stuff that you have been exposed to that you can mention or not? Yeah. And like, do you think that it's important that people that are in these types of roles that are under these stress situations interacting with people, do you think it's like necessary or important that they take on some type of self-defense or martial art kind of activities?
So I guess personally, I've not been physically assaulted at work. Yeah. Definitely copped a few sprays. Yeah. Definitely verbally. Yeah. Verbally abused quite semi-regularly. Yeah. I would say. So that's and like I'm a realist in the fact that if I'm in this job long enough, chances are at some stage it will happen. Yeah. To varying degrees. Yeah. I guess you just have to be very conscious of that and then try to minimize the chances. Yeah, for sure. I'm not exactly sure on the statistics, but I imagine that paramedics would be one of probably the highest percentages for that sort of thing. Yeah. And it definitely still happens. So just probably like 2 months ago, we were on a job, and then you come across the radio that like paramedics have been assaulted. Yeah. And there's a little orange button. If it has anything to do with ambulances, there's a little orange button up there. That's the duress alarm. So when that gets pushed, it opens up all the comms. Yeah. So then everything that you said is recorded. Yeah. So that definitely does happen. And in my time, so 2.5 years, I would have probably heard that push probably 5 or 6 times easy. Yeah. And that's just the days that I'm at work. Yeah. So yeah, you can, I guess, extrapolate those numbers. So yeah, it does happen quite a bit. I think it's from talking to older paramedics, it's getting better. Okay. It is getting better slowly. Yeah. But there's always still that that problem where I guess people have had too much to drink or taken other substances. They're not quite thinking the way that they would potentially normally think. Yeah. That's the obvious stuff. there's also a bit more of the sort of the insidious sort of stuff. So we often go to like domestic violence cases.
Yeah.
Where often the accuser is at home as well.
Yeah.
And then you have to, I guess, be very aware of looking for subtle signs of, you know, people, and then potentially they can become quite agitated if they've cottoned on that we've worked out what's going on.
Yeah.
So they can, they can sometimes be a bit of a dangerous sort of scenario. And I guess, it's just always important to know, like, little things that you pick up that you probably wouldn't pick up. Is that, for me personally, mate, when I walk into a new room, first thing you look for is the exits.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. So that's probably something that's probably happened since starting.
Yeah.
Since starting paramedics. But personally, no sort of physical altercations. Whether that's luck, being a male, you know, all these kinds of things. I'm very aware that, you know, it could be the next shift. You just don't know.
Yeah.
But it does still happen quite a lot. And I personally, like, my personal opinion would be, I would like to see a focus on some sort of very basic sort of self-defense, as we're sort of brushing on before we put the cameras on, just sort of saying that, like, whilst we're the non-combative arm of the services, we're the non-confrontational, the non-physical restraint side, we're still exposed to a lot of that.
Yeah.
And it would be nice, comforting, I guess, for people to have at least a grounding in some
form
way.
of self-defense.
Like, I know a few guys at work who do jiu-jitsu at various clubs around Brisbane, and they're sort of all saying the same sort of thing. It just gives them that confidence, you know, those carryover, those transitional kind of skills. So I think that would be something, because at the moment we receive very little, and I can understand the justification for it because it's not our role. But I think
you're put into those situations. So it's even though it's not your role, it's more as like a preservation thing for you guys. You know what I mean? Like I would, regardless of whether it's your role or not, I think everybody, and this is, again, like you're saying, that you're finding now colleagues and other people are putting it in their own interest to go and do that on their own. And like look, I don't want to say anything inflammatory or anything like that, but like I believe it's the responsibility of the Australian government or the Queensland government or whatever to ensure, like, man, all of these services, whether it be, because man, it be a teacher, a police officer, a paramedic, any type of health care professional, whatever, even nurses and stuff in the wards, like, they're like the key, they're the keystone of like our society, man. These people put back into the community on another level that you can't compare with so many other situations. You know what I mean? You rely on all of these people and all these jobs, and whether it's, you know, better for their mental health, or they give them confidence, or give it, like, they feel safer or whatever, and they're more enjoyable, right, of just the position in the way they're working because of stuff. I think it's important that, and again, you can't do this in a one-day seminar and all these things. That's generally how it's presented. All right, fine, we'll do this thing for you guys. Here's a 2-day seminar every year that you can go to learn how to self-defense. No. And I think it should be subsidized to some extent or whatever, where whether you're going to your own respective gyms or there is a, you know what I mean, a gym that's run by the Queensland government, whether it be martial arts or exercise or whatever, where it's mandatory for people to go and train twice a week, whatever. This is, and again, it's like that 3 basic things I talked about before. You have people in these high-stress jobs that are working under crazy duress and getting yelled at and getting assaulted and all this stuff. And man, they're going home, they're working huge hour shifts, they're going home, eating whatever they can, going to bed and doing this stuff. Man, I think it's mandatory. It should be mandatory. You know what I mean? Like, they're making all these other things mandatory. Man, basic 3 things of life should be mandatory. Sleep a certain amount, eat right, and exercise regularly. All right, minimum twice a week for an hour and a half or whatever, right? And I think, particularly in all these like healthcare professions and the you know, the police force and stuff, I think it should be mandatory for them to do some type of martial arts training, jiu-jitsu, something. I believe jiu-jitsu is probably the best balanced version of self-defense stuff, because it's close quarters comfort and defense system for everyday people. You don't need to be explosive. You don't need to be super powerful. You don't need to be anything. If you learn how jiu-jitsu works, you can physically defend yourself and survive against people much bigger than you. Mechanically, the way it works, the way your body works, if you learn how to use your body against other people, you can survive, you can defend yourself, as opposed to standing up and throwing strikes and all this stuff where, again, you also have a higher risk of killing somebody else. That's my belief. I think that should be mandatory. And it's not only going to, give them confidence, it's going to improve them as human beings, man. It's going to improve everything around them and everyone around them. Jiu-jitsu not only gives you the confidence to defend yourself, but it's such a powerful pathway for you to learn all these little lessons about life in a controlled environment, and then push you to be a better human being, man. And I think the more people that are exposed to it in the community on any setting, particularly in these high stress jobs, I think is going to be a massive
I totally agree. I think again, I'm relatively very new in this, and already in that short space of time, the benefits that I've personally felt. And like I said, across all the services, teachers, the whole lot. Like my wife's a teacher. They have to break up school fights.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly.
These kinds of things. It's like, would you be confident with no training to walk into two 90-kilo 17-year-olds going hammer and tongs at each other?
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to handle that scenario?
And most of the time, they won't be able to, and they just have to allow it to happen or get somebody else, like you're saying, call the duress button.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying that's wrong either, and people should protect themselves and not put themselves in harm's way, of course, but at least give people the opportunity to be able to feel comfortable, protect themselves, and also just improve the quality of everything around you. Because, man, it's a trickle-down effect, you know what I mean? You now have this confidence and you have this understanding, you have the ability to defend yourself, and everybody else in that service industry or whatever does as well. It's going to change the interaction of these people with people that they deal with also. I'm a strong believer in this as well, but whether it's police force, teachers, whatever, they don't have to now overreact or go to a certain level of aggression anymore, because they're not insecure about the fact that I'm threatened or whatever. They don't have a threatened scenario anymore. They don't feel threatened. And when you don't feel threatened with, or you don't give off that type of, I don't know, energy, but this sense or this aura that you, and I'm not talking auras in spirituality and stuff like that. People can sense how you kind of are presenting yourself, the aura of you, your presence. People can kind of interact with and feel. And if it's insecure and worried or whatever, people, man, this is what happens in a lot of situations. You're going to find people, they can sense, dogs smell fear. Absolutely. Man, people can too.
Anecdotally, I've got no hard evidence, but again, another thing you pick up pretty quickly as a paramedic is you learn to read rooms and people 100%. Relatively quickly. You know what I mean? And you can 100% pick up that vibe.
I think jiu-jitsu helps a lot how to read people as well. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for almost 10 years, and one thing that I really think I got really good is being more sensitive with. Anton always talks about being connected to people and creating this feeling of understanding, connection. And a lot of times I competed, you really feel when someone do grip on your gi and you feel them shaking. It's I already won the fight when I feel the guy is not confident. He already one step ahead. So I think jiu-jitsu, because you always in uncomfortable positions, you have to create this comfort while you are uncomfortable. It helps a lot to build this confidence, and it helps with everything, in my opinion. My opinion is that they should put martial arts mandatory in schools for kids. So any martial arts, I think judo or jiu-jitsu, I think should be mandatory for kids to do any kind of self-defense. I think that would be helpful for society.
Absolutely. I think in all levels of society, but I agree with that too. I think if you can put it in schools, great. If you can, but I think it should be 100% mandatory for people in all these service industries, man. On all levels, it's going to improve human beings and their interaction with the community. And that's kind of where I was getting to off of that aura. Man, if you're stressed or threatened by a situation and you know that person that human being, that thing, whether it's a police officer, paramedic, or whatever, you're not going to be able to do your job in the same way you would normally, because you're now in a threatened situation. You feel threatened.
Yeah.
Now, whether it's a police officer that overreacts because the person's big and powerful and aggressive and yelling over the top of you, and you've lost control of the situation, so instead of handling it the way you would have normally, you now end up overexerting. You end up doing something that's wrong, and you have, you know, somebody injured or you know, gravely, you know, receiving some, you know, whatever, broken bones, whatever, something massively wrong that shouldn't be happening, an overexertion of force. Or a teacher that has, you know, two big guys that, man, there's no way they're going to step in front of and separate something, and one of them could get hurt. Or if they do it and like, oh, I better get in the way, they're going to get injured. So
Exactly.
it just gives people a deeper understanding of things that actually happen day to day. Like, violence is never going to disappear from society. So what you have to do is teach people how to deal with violence. And Jiu-Jitsu is a very controlled way of learning how to deal with violence, and it's a very, very controlled way to deal with violence as well.
It's very
and it's absolutely necessary. You know what I mean? And yeah, like it's just an interesting conversation, because we've talked with some like police officers and stuff like that around the gym and stuff like that, and this is something that they kind of mentioned as well. Like, this is an important area that's kind of overlooked a little bit, and it's not only in the police force; it's in, you know, the medical industry as well, and whether it be nurses or paramedics and stuff like that. You know, you have to be able to deal with violence as a human being. It is a component of life. As much as, you know, we try to push it out of society, it will never disappear. It's a human nature. It's an animal instinct. Violence is a part of your nature, and of course it's unflattering and not nice to talk about, but it's real. And it's better to talk about and be prepared for things that are real than pretend that they don't exist and not actually be able to deal with them.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think that's, yeah. In my line of work, we see the violence a lot. So I totally agree with that. It's here to stay.
Yeah.
People, when they're out of ideas, they will resort to that.
Yeah.
To accomplish whatever it was that they set out to do. So if you can be taught an effective and safe system to manage and to deal with that, and to exude a bit of an, not confidence, but like, you know, like if that's where this is heading,
you're just okay. Exuding a level of non-threatened behavior. Like like I said before, people can sense whether you're threatened, people can sense whether you're stressed, people can sense whether all these things. And, you know, like between the sexes, it's a little bit different too. Like, you know, probably you'd say that most females, your girlfriend, whatever, she's very good at picking up social cues. Straight away when you're like, oh, whatever, oh, what's wrong? You know what I mean? You get into an argument, whatever. Good. It's exactly, they're too good at picking up what's going on. Before you even realize you're upset, they already know, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, so the thing is like, that's different too. But like, if you exude an aura, and man, like if you're a police officer, if you're whatever, if you're put in a position where you're an authority figure, you're in a position of leadership, but you're the one that's unsure and threatened or whatever, of course somebody else is going to notice that.
Yeah.
Particularly if they're in a position of like, man, I'm about to go back to prison, whatever. Oh, this guy's freaking out. It's his first day out of the academy, whatever. Man, screw this guy. Like, it gives people the ability to exert leadership and confidence in positions where they actually need to in their job. You know what I mean? And I think that's really important, to give people that power, and not, again, throw them in the deep end of the pool. Because in my opinion, the same thing that's happening with all these service industries that would cause a lot of friction and discomfort, and why it's so chaotic, is it's no different than that first stage of jiu-jitsu where you're going, here you go, throw them in the deep end, blah, 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 blah. And the thing is like, the paramedics, the police officers, the people that have been doing those jobs for a long time, they learn how to deal with it. They learn how to deal with it, but it might take 10 years and there might be catastrophic problems in those 10 years. Whereas if you at least give them a different skill that they can start to work on, it might not take 10 years, it might take 2. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. It's like finding the people who are good at certain aspects of the job like that. Yeah. And that was essentially the advice that I was given on how to, how to talk to like patients who are having like maybe like a psychosis episode or something like that. There's no way to learn other than getting it wrong a lot. Yeah. And be watching people who are good.
But maybe the people that are good, you know, I mean, they should do some workshops with the people 100%. That are good within their own community that have been doing it for 50 years to teach the other people that are coming through. And like, even small things like that you can implement that are going to change how.
Yeah, couldn't agree. Yeah, that's spot on. It'd just be nice if that could sort of happen in a streamlined sort of way where you could just, I guess, expedite that 2 or 3 years where you suck.
Yeah,
And just get that streamlined straight into where you at least can, you can tread water.
And like, you know, unfortunately, a lot of things are about like funding and money and stuff like that. And it's not always about what's best for the community and what's best for everyone. It's what we can afford, or it's what we're being allocated and stuff. And, you know, that's unfortunate. But yeah, I think if people put more attention into actually what's the best thing for everybody, as opposed to what's the best thing for me or for what my position is and stuff. And yeah, man, it's a really interesting thing to navigate. Yeah, we always end up talking about society and the world and stuff like that here a little bit. You know, I think I've been talking about it too much. But yeah, man, it's just such a complex kind of.
Yeah, but you're definitely part of it, and you see a certain aspect that's 100%. Overlooked a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
And you guys have definitely got, and again, I can vouch for you. Definitely got something to add to that. You know, my small exposure to this sort of thing.
Yeah.
I've been recommending it probably ad nauseum to people who, like, even if they don't want to listen, I'm telling them.
Hey, have you heard about Jujutsu?
I know a really good gym. Come follow me.
No, I think Jujutsu changes the way you carry yourself. You know, I changed a lot the way I used to be when I first started, and now, for example, before I still like to drink beer sometimes, but I used to over exaggerate on beer sometimes. You know. And after you start doing jiu-jitsu and you have a weekend that you drink alcohol and you come on Monday to do a session, you don't feel very comfortable, you know? So it was like along the way, I pretty much stopped drinking, you know? There's something you say that before you started jiu-jitsu that you changed, like in your diet, I used to drink beers and I don't drink anymore. There's something that Jiu-Jitsu made you change something?
Probably when I come back to Jiu-Jitsu and started training, but like when I was training, like the same sort of time when I was coaching Anton, like I was taking it relatively seriously, and I was probably like not drinking as much then. And then had a few years where I was doing not much, and then you sort of
fall back into the habit,
old habits, very sociable habits. And then when I now have like goals and targets are based around jiu-jitsu and that sort of thing, it just allows me to focus on that. And then I think as a byproduct, you find that your diet cleans up a little bit.
100%.
You drink less. You know,
by default. I talked about this with Fabio. So Fabio is another student here that's a brown belt, and he's one of the senior guys at the gym. He's been here for a long time. Like when he first started, he used to smoke a lot. And the thing is like the physical catalyst is the most important way to facilitate change in your life. Like most people always talk about changing. Oh, I'm going to do this, and I'm feeling about this. The only way to actually change is to go and do something that forces you to be uncomfortable about that behavior. Oh, I'm going to do jiu-jitsu. I don't feel good when I drink anymore. Oh, I better stop drinking. Oh, I smoke cigarettes. I want to quit. What's the point of quitting? No, you've got to give yourself an incentive to quit. All right, go there and go and run 5 kilometers 3 times a week. See how long you can keep smoking.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So like, again, there's so many different things you're going to learn about life and stuff through jiu-jitsu. So start training. All right, well, we'll cut it short a little bit because we've got to do some other stuff after this. But Kerrod, thanks so much for coming along. Like just the insight about like strength and conditioning, and particularly, that little bit on the end about like paramedic stuff and service industry. I think this is a cool conversation and something that like I think a lot of people can kind of think about and look into. And if they're if they're the ones that are in positions of police officers, whatever, man, think about doing jiu-jitsu, think about doing boxing, think about doing Muay Thai, whatever. And for your own confidence, for your own, like, you're not going to feel threatened anymore. You're not going to be living in fear all the time. Like, of course, fear is a normal component of life and stuff, but it takes the edge off of this stuff a little bit, and you're not so threatened in so many different situations, I think, particularly when dealing with other people. That I would say that's probably the biggest thing that kind of comes into people's heads when they're put in situations with other people that are tense, that you can sense, that you need to look for the doors and exits. Like, it's going to change that a little bit, and that's going to help with you doing a better job in whatever you're doing. So
absolutely,
yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate all your insight and stuff. And again, we've got a bit of a connection with the strength and conditioning stuff, and back in the old days doing some lifting. Lucas, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you.
For Eduardo. That's it, guys. Thank you.